preparing some of this is real quick.
If you want some, that's what I'll put you down there, whatever you want. You want some, Barton?
No, I think I've got plenty. I'm still trying to just clear out stuff right now. We're doing a lot of work driving fence posts.
One of these about high, it fell over, hung up in the tree, and I took the tractor. He saw it, and I drug it down on the ground where you work it up. It cleaned up, it looks better.
You don't have a sawmill, do you?
Nope.
I want one.
I love one.
I know what, got one. I know what, got one, else. Got one.
Get a lot of use out of the sawmill. You just don't want to have it brought to you. Well, if somebody wants to bring you wood, that's fine. You have a sawmill.
Good. You had to start by using that cane,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I still use it for
safety.
stopping, standing, turning.
I got a little water this evening, and you told me I fell off of one leg up, one leg down.
Until we get up the next day. I don't remember how I got that proved.
Yeah, where'd that thing come from?
Used to be the beauty shop.
Mm-hmm.
Right there.
Why am I that
Guess
sore?
that's somewhere
Yeah,
out there.
yeah.
Didn't do all that much yesterday. That one thing.
No concept on that.
Like my wife went to talk to me, she said, he won't tell you everything.
Oh.
Said he had 3 or 4 bottles last year. I said, yeah, they did. I said, my cousin, I was up in the front end loader, cutting a tree, and I said, he come down. I said,
I know that's why it's like
I
this,
was off the back, and about 6 foot high.
Oh, that's not two-story, the older
Of course, I thought he'd go to the ground with the thing.
Yeah. Like a little-
Yep, weed eating, stepped back on a pile of dirt, around the garden, busted it again. You can get them in a hurry.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Especially that kind of stuff.
There's Joe's bike.
Did you
right there.
know,
What's that?
Skate park, bike park.
field park?
I'm liking it. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Which committee, if any, would be the ones to discuss? You're on fire. Oh, that just be a city ordinance, that would be.
I didn't know you guys touched on that on that stuff. So.
Answer my question, I think.
Good deal.
If I want to bring up the
I need to tell you,
ordinance for the
golf
lunch,
course,
yes, then you can have.
Yes, yes.
That would be a regular
Right there.
work session meeting, not a particular
Yeah.
committee.
I still will bring up the planning and zoning,
I don't even know.
if you wanted to put it in there in districts. Otherwise, it's just animal control, and we got to follow what all county does. Oh,
No.
Okey dokey.
There's a difference on zoning.
Let's talk. This hardship is where it came up one time, I had to address it. Good. Right.
I don't know if you got a number, we're calling
I
now.
got me a new one,
I see that.
but no,
Welcome to the table, G. I mean, Chip.
this is a fancy dancy one. Look, you plug this thing up and charge it, and that's a charging pad for your phone when you're in meetings that go real long. You can just charge your phone on your.
I'm saving up to get one of them fancy things that goes got.
We're running ahead of schedule, so let's try to stay that way.
That's
This is mine.
I want to do your
This is mine.
It's easy.
mine.
All right.
I keep pouring in it.
So, heads up, current conditions. Sewer, the automated bar screen up top keeps falling out. We've had it looked at a number of times. It's not that it means anything to y'all, but it's a lakeside, piece of machinery, and the control panel is lakeside, and we're having problems getting, it's not a starter, it controls amperage, and we can't get it to replicate itself. But anyway, the problem is we can't replace, we haven't found a replacement for that piece of the control issue. And we had it back out looking today, so we're trying to find that particular block that we can change out that will match with what we have existing. The good news is in the control panel itself, the piece we're replacing is about that big, and we have as much as that space. So, and we do that on bars. But anyway, that's aggravation because like I said, we haven't been able to replicate it. We can turn it on, turn it off, do whatever we want, and then Friday at 4:15, it amped out. This morning at 8:05, it amped out, but it didn't do it the rest of the day. So, I mean, it's one of those things. And the amps on it are very low, so that's not the issue.
This is that initial bar screen.
Right, the one on
Right.
top.
Right when it comes in, that screen's
Right.
out.
It's off where the auger is.
Yes, that
Pulls
first.
it up, yeah. So anyway, we're just letting you know, waste pump for clarifier needs repacking, that's actually in the basement. And we've ordered the parts for repacking that, and that'll be 2 or 3 weeks, like everything that's in we touch.
Can I go back to that bar screen right quick here? Just for clarification. Is it the breaker that keeps tripping it out?
It's an interior, if it senses more amperage that the motor's trying to get, then it automatically faults it out.
Okay.
So it's not, if it was as easy as, we can push reset all day long. That's not the issue. We can't figure out why it's amping out. Like I said, it's very low amps anyway. And on the piece that we're replacing, you can turn up the amperage so it's not as sensitive. Because, when a motor starts, that's when it pulls the most amperage. So we've done that, but it's such a low amp that there's something there. And it's, the one thing I'll remind y'all with everything in control panels when you get around to wastewater is the sewer gas. And sewer gas makes your contacts questionable. We've cleaned all of them. We've had our vendors clean them. But like I said, we're all kind of scratching our head. And it wouldn't be so difficult. We can't find that exact piece anymore. So it's no longer available. So now we just have to find one that's suitable. But we were out there, we had them out there again today because tripped out, and they're again trying to figure out what can fit in that same spot.
So what's happening is the motor trying to kick on.
Yeah, when it comes on, it's full of amperage.
It's
and
not
that's-
motor.
No, we actually rebuilt the motor. That's a rebuilt motor. It's about 2 years old. And when we set the amperage meter on the motor, that's how they check it. And we kick it all on. It's not the motor.
And it's not anything getting
It's
caught
happening
up
down
in
in the control box.
it's not anything getting caught up in the mechanism that allows
No,
the screen.
because we see that in the motor itself. Yeah, we just haven't been able to figure it out. And more likely, it's either in that one little piece that needs to be replaced because the sewer gas has gotten to it. But we've cleaned all the contacts. I mean, we've had our vendor out there probably 4 times in the last 2 weeks. And we had them out there again today, this afternoon, the same thing. We had this. And what they're looking for now is they think it's that one piece, and they no longer can get that one piece. So now they got to figure out what they can get to put in this place. So if it was a starter, that'd be easy. We could swap that out, but it's not. The starter's actually up top. And we flipped that, we've taken that out, swapped it out with another starter. Same thing, if that was the issue. So it's one of those, just process of elimination. And like I said, they think they've identified it, but they just can't get that particular part anymore. Waste pump clarifier, that's in the basement, repacking parts. Like I said, that's 2 to 3 weeks. The pack tank. So about a year ago, we had problems. Well, actually, 3 years ago, we had problems with our chemical supplier. They sent us a bad batch of PAC. And PAC is supposed to be, PAC is the chemical that we had that acts as a magnet to phosphorus. That's what goes in the FEV, grabs a hold of phosphorus, we send it through the clarifier and the sand filters, and it removes it. And then we waste that out. And 3 years ago, we had a bad batch come in, and the stuff is liquid the whole time. Well, it's what we call settled. It's settled out, so the chemical composition of it settled out into a solid. That can happen a couple of different ways, but anyway, we put that back on our vendor. Well, the vendor came in, cleaned the tank out, disposed of the bad pack. We ordered 5,000 gallons at a time. About a year ago, we got a bad batch in, and we started to get where some of it was settling out. 5,000 gallons, maybe 400 gallons were settling out. So that's 400 gallons of solids. Big tank, no way to remove it. We talked about putting a mixer in. Well, you can't use a mixer on pack. It actually would encourage the settlement of solids in that. So we, went back to the vendor who was selling us and what have you, complained with them. Well, they took no ownership in it at all, and they've come out in the past 6 months and evaluated it, and now it's got to a point where we're just bringing in separate totes because I wanted them to clean that big 5,000 gallon chemical tank out, and they refused to do it. So guess what? We're not using that vendor anymore. They've had us on that one, and so anyway, hopefully next week we'll clean that out. We're going to dispose of the solids ourselves, and then we'll get the thing back up. We played a game with the supplier the whole 6 months. They put us off. They're going to do this. They're going to send somebody out. And then we looked at other companies to actually help us alleviate the problem. Not inexpensive. That's all I tell you. So this one, hopefully this will resolve it, and we'll never use that vendor ever again. So, and if you know anything about chemicals, the people we actually buy from are just middlemen. There's only, depending on what chemical you use, there's very few suppliers. Pack as an example. In the state of Georgia, there's probably only 4 suppliers, but there's 100 chemical companies, and they represent all the different ones what have it. So that's their problem, not ours. So we're going to make sure we, with our vendors that we use now, we wish there was a way to test everything coming in. As bad as I hate to say it, the simplest thing to make pack fall out is water. So if you dilute it, it has a shelf life of better than 6 months. We usually fill those tanks up twice a year, so we've never run into the 6 month problem. So that's not been the issue, but you can see how easy it would be if I bring you, I'm just suggesting, I didn't say this happened. If I bring you 4,000 gallons of pack and add 1,000 gallons of water to it, I won't know the difference because it'll start settling out. Does that make sense? It'll start converting solids over time, but it's not going to happen overnight. And there's not a means or a method, I wish there was, that we could validate what we get. And so what we've learned is there are certain people in the chemical business, which we've done that, don't do business because they're like a standby product we don't have to use. So that's just a heads up on y'all. It's very frustrating. So we ordered a Willow submersible motor pump ordered in April of 2020 to replace one of the pumps that sits in one of the basins because we had to rebuild it. We received it 2 weeks ago. So there's the problem with the economy. Nobody keeps any inventory. And this is a 700 pound pump. It's a big bag. So it's sitting out back and it came from Germany. So we're glad we have it on hand.
That's the backup?
Yeah. Well, that's actually, we never had a backup on that. We had one go bad, rebuilt it, and thought, we better get a backup. It wasn't one of the things they required to be redundant. So now we have it.
This is a backup.
Right. So, which there's a common story here, isn't it? Plants getting older, not everything. We enjoyed 10 years of not having any issues. Well, we're finding out this only lasts so long. Received EPD wastewater inspection report. I sent that to everybody. 256 items we had. It was. It says what we're supposed to do every day out there. I hope y'all found that enlightening in that, none of that happens by happenstance. It's, purposeful. I brag on the people that work over there, but if it wasn't for Hoyt, all the folks there, even the girls keeping track of the record keeping and what have you, we probably wouldn't be as successful. And the fellow who did our inspections was very impressed with our operation, even though we have a lot of issues. But, because it breaks, we fix it. And, we don't do it halfway. Matter of fact is, he knew about the pack tank issue, and he goes, Yeah, he said, man, I've seen that happen more often than not. He said, at least y'all are addressing the issue, but it's still frustrating. So, any questions on that inspection report we sent everybody? Wasn't that fun? It really is. It's commendable, what we do every day.
You feel like nothing to do with it.
Yep, and everything's been done. They had 3 items of corrections. 2 of them are constant. Let's see, one of them is the stair steps that had the algae buildup on. Well, we can clean it tomorrow and we'll have algae buildup next week. It's just a matter of how bad it is. So, let's see. And then I think that one thing of consequence was we have 2 batteries of 8 each, of 8 bulbs each, of UV lights, and the one battery that we're using had, I don't think it had 3 bulbs. I might be mistaken about it, but anyway, that's big. So we pull those, the same thing. We don't run them both at the same time. We don't need them because we don't have that much flow. So we operate this one for 30 days, swap them out, operate the other one for 30 days. We pull the ones out that we take out of service, we pull them up, clean them, so they're ready to go back into service the next time. So, anyway, let's see, treatment numbers are well within permit. Ammonia continues to be a problem. So we're doing this every day. I go to the plant and we're looking at numbers. And yes, it appears we're making progress. But if you'd asked me 2 weeks ago, I thought we were making progress too. But an example, and I don't put you on sleep, but we have 2 SBRs. They mirror each other in some regard, but one has been more predominant with having higher ammonia than the other. Visually, when you look at one SBR over SBR1 versus 2, SBR1 has what we call better flock. I know, never mind, I'm going to put y'all safe. Number 2 looks like crap, but it's putting out better numbers. When you consider all the things that were measured on in our permit, we're hitting it all. It's the ammonia. And the reason is the type bug that you have and the microorganisms that we have. And the bug that we're talking about that helps us convert ammonia as a liquid into a gas are called nitrifiers. And they're probably the more sensitive of all the microorganisms we have in there. And in that they like a higher pH. And so, we've improved on the pH a little bit. But like I said, Basin 1 pH is running, we want around about 7.5. The perfect world of nitrifiers. And number 2, nitrifiers are working better in number 2, and yet the pH is like 6.8. So it's a damn if you do, you just can't figure everything out. So we're looking at processes. And so remember there's 4 basins up there, 2 SBRs, and the FEB. The FEB is when we take everything off the top. That's the cleanest of waste. It goes in the FEB. That's where we treat it with PAC. And then the digester. The digester is the big basin that's full of poop. We call it concentrated poop. So I call it the domino effect. We waste into the digester. Then we run the belt press. The belt press squeezes all the moisture out of the poop. What happens to the moisture that's in the digester when we squeeze it out? It returns to the headworks in the plant. So it goes back in again. To me, that's the domino flip. So if it's the our joke is the digester bad? It's not. Is SBR1 bad? It is. Is SBR2 bad? Not so much. I mean, still not perfect numbers, and then we waste from SBR1 to SBR2. We tried everything. Just what I described. Instead of wasting to the digester, we're wasting from number 2 to number 1, and from number 1 to the digester. We've seen some benefit of that, and I know I'm putting you all to sleep. It is very annoying. We have even purchased nitrifiers, and so we've actually bought the microorganisms. We we know the ratio we're supposed to include, we know the time in the different 6 processes that we do in the SBR, when to put it in, and all that's determined on other things that are going on in the basin. I see everybody's eyes rolling in the back of their head. So one of the things we've been trying to do is increase the flock. The flock is where the nutrient level and the bugs are almost in harmony. You can actually see it. So we put it under a microscope, see the bugs there. If you don't have any flock, that means there's not that much to eat. It could be an issue on that, believe it or not. You got to have a certain amount of poop for the bugs to actually thrive. So that much we try to enhance as well. We purchased, we're working with 3 different consultants and our own engineer, and trying to understand, what is it? Well, we've looked at fat content, we have looked at everything under the sun. And this is one of those things that I worry about. Too many chefs in the kitchen spoil the soup. You've heard that statement before. So we'll have, one of our consultants say, well, what if we did this? And we'll have another one, not in disagreement, saying, well, what if we did that? And the problem with waste treatment plants is, no matter what I do today, I won't see the ramifications or the improvements for 2 or 3 days. And if you do too much, you'll never know what you did to either make it worse or make it better. So we've had to stair step, let's do this. Today, as an example, normally we do, like I said, I know I'm putting you to sleep, we decant off of the digester. In other words, we let it settle out and we take what's called supernate off the top, which is the clear liquid. Well, for the past 3 weeks, that's normal operation. That's what we do. We decant off the top. We're not going to do that this week. This week, we're only going to run the belt press. We're not going to take the supernates off the top, because what I saw last week was we took the supernates off the top on Thursday. By the way, the ammonia in the digester was like 8.78. That was on Thursday. We took about 2.5 foot off the top of that. On Friday, when we pulled the ammonia numbers again, they went up to 12.75. And direct correlation to what we're doing off the digester, but the digester's running ammonia at 8.75. Something doesn't click. So, as an example, what we're doing this week, we're only running the belt press, which is going to do the same thing. You'll get rid of the supernitrates like we talked about, but at the same time, it'll be all through process. Because when you take 2.5 foot off of anything and put it into a 500,000 gallon or 400,000 gallon basin, that can make a big difference, is what it boils down to. So, are the numbers improved? Yes. But they should be less than 2. So this continues to be a frustration for us. The super nitrates, if I had to buy, if the answer was buying $10,000 worth tomorrow, I'd buy them, because we got to figure out what's going on. But that's not the issue. You can put them in there and they'll die off because the environment's not right for them. Does that make sense, y'all? So we've got nitrates sitting in one of the refrigerators. I said one. We've had the same refrigerator there for 12 years and it's worked great. You saw it. It's not pretty. It's because the sewer gas melts it off. Well, we're going to move that refrigerator back in the blower room. We're going to keep the nitrates back in there so nobody has to eat their lunch with the same place where we're keeping the microorganisms. And so we've got a new stainless steel, inexpensive $878 refrigerator coming in. And we hope when we move the old one that it doesn't die on us, because it had to get the same problem up to now. Man, it's very frustrating all the time that we're spending on this. And I mean, everybody's lost sleep over this. That's all I can say.
Stupid question.
Yep.
Big bugs, do they have a cycle sort of like any ant organism, like they poop, they pee?
Not so much as this way. This way we always explain to everybody. But yes, they have life cycles. So here's what we try to do with the microorganism. We make it in each SBR. We try to make their environment very appealing to them. So one of the things we do is we control the pH. pH is a big factor. There are all sorts of microorganisms. Some microorganisms you want, some you don't want. And depending on the food to bug ratio, that's one way we control it. So we're controlling what type of bug that will be in there because it'll profit. In the nicest way, we want the bugs in an environment where they're fat and happy. When they're fat and happy, they're getting plenty of food. And the environment, the pH, even the temperature can be affected. They love to reproduce. They're fat, they're happy, they reproduce, and the last thing they do is die. They don't put off, as you were talking about the life cycle, they don't put off enough waste to make a difference. Right.
You know, something like that.
If we took, no, you're right. Yeah, that's not, and we actually, like I said, we want certain bugs.
Yeah.
It's like the nitrifiers that I talked about. They like a higher pH, so they thrive more in a higher pH. Other bugs, not so much. So where you can increase with the nitrifiers themselves by raising the pH, you may be decreasing a different type of bug over here. At the end of the day, I can't help but say it's cool to watch what happens under a microscope because you get to look and identify just the bug you're looking for, and you'll actually see them in there, eating and doing what they're supposed to do. And so that's what we try to do is enhance the environment. So what do we think happens? We think that we got slugs, which we said all along. We have over 400 manholes, and you can't watch every one of them, which is a problem. We have visited every one of our industries. We've taken them, reminded them of what's required of them in our sewer use ordinance, our fats, oils, and grease ordinance, what they can and can't do. We've inspected their facilities, and we haven't found a problem child out there yet. So we think it's more than likely we got slug past all our pump stations. Because initially when it all started out, it was one SBR only. If it went through all our pump stations, it would be through all the entire plant. Does that make sense to y'all? So we think it came past all our pump stations, and it could have very easily come from Magnolia Station because there's no pump stations. And it just, somebody opened up a manhole and dumped it. And ironically, we think it was a septic hauler because we could smell it. Have you ever been in a porta potty? There's kind of a flowery smell. I'm not talking about poop. I'm being real. I mean, they actually put, yeah. Well, we actually sensed that at the plant back in November. And the problem is that, we didn't recognize it for what it might have been right then. And it wasn't. So we record everything. We write anything and everything in the book over there. And that was one of the items where we all noted it. We say, man, it all smells floral. Poop never smells floral. But it wasn't overcoming, but that very well could have been an issue. Very well could have been. So the problem for us is educate, inspect what you expect, and, for us, wrapping our arms around this is just challenging. I appreciate Deborah's and now Trinity, him being back, has come on board, and our engineers and our consultants, because it has just been a nightmare. But, I think we're good. We'll keep you abreast of whether or not we're actually turning the corner. Any questions on the wastewater treatment plant? Don't forget to put down that as a meeting date when we're running the plant. And put in your time for this next month.
Oh, okay.
All right, water. County line tank, we fix that. So a transducer, great example. So a transducer measures the levels of the tank. So the county line tank, no more than we've got the bullet hole fixed, that we stop getting levels from. Well, we're not as dependent on that because the big tank is the one we take our levels that turns off and on. The wells that we have out there. But we obviously want to have that information, so we stopped getting the data stream from it. So last week we replaced the transducer. It worked just like that. It was wonderful. Only to have it start doing the hiccup for the past 4 days. So we think that's a SCADA issue where we're not getting either corrupted data because it's all digital, or something keeps losing the signal. And we'll nail it down. Today it was on half the day and off half the day, which is, I guess, better than it was 2 weeks ago. But anyway, very frustrating. Meter replacement. So we talked about replacing meters. And we actually have to make some purchases in the near future, because right now I'm down to 44 regular meters and I've got about 32 meter boxes. So we use Delta meters, and those are what we call 4th generation. And this came up in the last meeting. Chip inquired, actually Chip, you inquired a couple of things, how we can enhance the data we give to the customers, as well as billing and what have you. So we're coming into what they call the 5th generation meter. And all that's digitalized, and you get tons of information, and it can tell you all sorts of things. It can tell you, this is a good example of what we're looking for on these meters. So this gives you a tremendous amount of data. It's reading your meter usage 24/7, but not. You can actually pull the signal down anytime you want. Once a day, this particular meter we're talking about now, I'm going to pull it up over here. So this meter goes on top of, this is just a register. So it goes on top of the metal meter. Y'all know how a metal meter works, the ones we use. They have like a butterfly on the inside of it. Water comes in on this side, goes out on that. It's turning a turbine up underneath. So the metal part of the meter is here. That's just an encasement. The guts are all plastic, so it rotates through there. So the idea is it's like a turbo wheel. So what it does, it's got a magnet on it. So it spins, as it's spinning as the water goes through it, that magnet spins, and that little dot right there picks up the number of revolutions that the magnet is spinning. So this is what's kind of cool, is through the years, we know when you flush a toilet, that meter can tell you they flushed the toilet because of how much flow goes through it. Now, if you're washing dishes and dishwasher and filling the bathtub at the same time that you flush the toilet, no, it can't distinguish that. But it can distinguish a lot of things. So when we say this, we're now going into 5th generation. This meter can honestly tell you, if not only now our meters right now can tell you if you have a continuous leak or not. Or if you have and it can graph that continuously. But now this meter can tell you if you have a continuous leak, where you might find it in the house itself, what to look for, and communicate that with your customer. So once a year, this can pull down data, which is in here. This is what you want to look at. This is the kind of cool stuff. And we can decide what data we want to share with the customer and what we don't. And we want them to be first to be able to understand it, so there's no reason you wouldn't want to share it. But it can give them a graph on their daily usage. You know, they'll begin to see trends just like we see trends. We can tell you when everybody gets up in the morning, because we see the usage go up. We can see that in our own graph. We can tell you when Johnny sits down and has dinner at night and when he gets to have a bath, because we can see the same thing. This would do it on an individual level. This can do that. This particular meter that we're looking at right here is actually tied to the Verizon network. So we would never have to read meters again. This sends a digital signal 24 once you can pick the hours you can test it. And not only does it send that signal, but if it sees a problem, it can also send an email to us saying there's a problem and to the customer. So it is a cool device. But everything comes at a cost. First thing is there's a big old D-size battery in there. Anybody tells you it's not a D-size battery, they're lying to you. But that's what it is. It's good for about 10 years. So they prorate it past 10 years now, over 20 years. Well, two things happen in the meter. The meter base, remember the metal part we were talking about, has a little wheel in there? Those are plastic, and they wear out. They'll wear out because the turbidity in the water will wear them out and what have you. So meters, usually after 10 years of use, either need to be rebuilt, nobody rebuilds them, or replaced. And we say as a rule that you might see in a meter that's been in the ground for 10 years that you may have at least 20% loss in what it reads. And then you couple that, this is why I think the industry does this, they've got a battery in there that hasn't improved, and for all the years that we've had the battery, I don't believe that for a second. They want you to replace this, and that's true of every vendor out there. So the decision now is, and the meters we're using now, like I said, we're 4th generation, so if we go out there, we can read the meter, it can pull a graph down, we can share that with a customer. A lot of times we'll get customers saying, I don't have a leak. Well, we can actually pull and run a graph on it and say, not only do you have a leak on Saturday, January 9th, this is when the water started leaking, and on Monday, January, 12th, it's correct. And that's cool data to be able to share with everybody, but it takes a lot of expense on our part. We have to physically go out, read the meter right then and there. This does all that for you. This meter will also, you can actually tie that meter onto the cutoff, which is additional dollars, and you can turn somebody's water off remotely. And, is that a feature we want? I think it's going to be a feature that we're going to be forced to adopt to. So imagine for a minute that you're a customer and there's a meter on the market that can tell you if you have a leak. And this city chooses not to buy that meter. And then at the end of their billing cycle, their bill's outrageous because they didn't know they had a leak. I think that this is eventually going to be imposed on all of us, whether we want it or not, because the technology is there. Does that make sense to y'all? Now, then the question is, what can you afford? Because, and I don't know what it takes, but this is all proprietary. You put it in one meter, you can't read it with another system. They do that intentionally, and all of them do. So maybe the advantage for us is that we have such a small system that y'all can even consider upgrading this. But because you're only talking 14 to 1,500 meters versus Gainesville, who may have 30,000. Imagine the expense for them to do a complete change out. So the other thing, there's a reward. EPD's big on loving meter change out. So consequently, they have GFA make loans available if you'll do 100% change out. So they'll give you a low interest loan, and within a year's period of time, you got to change out all your meters. That's a big task for a city of our size. But they do make low interest loans to be able to do that. Plus, for us, we can match, for meters that we're changing out today, we can match this register and put it right on top of the brand new base that we've just replaced, so we wouldn't lose all the meters we have in the ground. Does that make sense? So we want to change out the meter that's 10 years old, everything, right? But the ones that we just changed out with the current register that we have, if y'all choose to go this meter or somebody else's, you can do that. I saw this meter about, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago. Let me use an example of how old it is. That sat in my window. And I've looked at everybody else's meter. What I love about this is the digital read. When you buy a meter, you buy 10 years of service with Verizon. You don't have an out-of-pocket expense monthly. We'll stop reading meters. And if we want to read a meter, we can pull it up on the computer and signal that meter to give us all its data for that day. Today, we probably had 5 calls, a little unusual, for people calling up and saying, can you check my meter to see if we fix the leak? Can y'all see if it's on this? You can pull it up right then and there and see if the leak's been fixed or not, because it's measuring the rate of flow that goes through the meter. So, whether we use this meter or somebody else's, I think our hand's going to be pushed to actually go to this as we go to 5th generation. What our current meter supplier offers is they have a web network that we need to put up towers to receive a signal that's put out, not like Verizon, or we can have an advanced, you have radio read meters now, as you know, but you have advanced measuring box that actually goes out and picks up the signal. So right now we just drive around the city, that's how we pick it up. Well, on these, you can pick up an area as big as a mile in a very short period of time, and it's pulling in, you can actually pull in data faster than you can drive the car, is what it boils down to. So the problem with that is it's very expensive. If you told us tomorrow to go to that system with our Neptune meters that we have right now, the problem would be it'd be cost prohibitive, because it would cost us, we'd have to put up about 3 towers. One we could utilize on our water tank. Probably we might be able to utilize Caroline tank as well, but it would come at a cost of about $7,000 to put antennas up there. And if we had more customers, you could divide and conquer. If we had 30,000 customers, you could spend the same amount of money, and it would be proportionally a very small amount. So that's a darn if you do and a darn if you don't. We currently pay on our existing meters right now, we're paying $245 per meter. Now that's complete meter. That's the base, and that's the register on top. These meters, as an example, although I do like them, this is $365. If we change with complete base and top, if we change just the top out, they're $325 a piece. And those are based on.
Can I stop you right there?
Yep.
That right there is $325.
Yes.
That plus the base is how much?
$365
Total.
They're giving you a discount if you use. But remember, we don't need to replace all the bases.
Right. How many bases roughly do you know that we would have to change out?
So we change them as we get as these batteries go bad. So it's hard to say. I can tell you how many we changed that last month, and I can tell you how many.
But you don't know how many of the old ones we have left in the field.
I can probably do some calculations.
100, 500, 1,000.
I don't know. Again, I've had to do calculations and try to see. But
The only reason I asked is, my buddy that lives in North Carolina, he's got a plumbing company, and he had a contract for a while to install new meters for PwC in Cape Fear. So he said that there's a meter that they're using. It's very similar to this, but it's all one plastic unit. It's not a top and a bottom, and it's got a 10-year life on it as well. That meter, he said, was less than $300 because the entire thing is plastic. It doesn't have a metal or a brass or whatever base to it.
So, same thing. I wondered why they hadn't gone all plastic as well.
So they're all plastic, but that would mean we would have to change 100% of them out, whereas this one, we would only have to change out whatever's old, so.
Yeah, I was surprised there wasn't a bigger differential between the register and the full meter.
Yeah.
But obviously there won't be.
Now that I've got this, I told him once I got this information from you, I'd give this to
So
him.
I'm not saying this is the company, I'm saying this is the type of technology
Yes.
we want. The one thing that bothers me about this company, nobody uses it in the state of Georgia. Alabama, yes. Florida, yes. One of the things I asked your friend about, for the plastic meters, complete, ask if they have a freeze monitoring. So in other words, if that meter ever gets to where it's sensing that it's gonna freeze, then a signal supposedly comes out, and it'll supposedly, this is what I've heard, that it'll open the flow to that meter, whether or not the people in the house have it flowed or not. It's kind of like same thing we do is let your faucet strip, same thing on that. Now how they force that, I don't know, but it must have a relief on it. So in other words, it would have a hole off to the side that they could let that leach out rather than the meter go bad. So that's the only bad thing I've heard about plastic meters.
Well, and I asked him about that. I asked him about, well, it's all plastic. And I asked him the difference between the plastic freezing. He goes, what do you think's going to freeze faster, plastic or metal? I said, I don't know. You tell me. He goes, they're both going to freeze at the same rate.
We never had meters.
He said they're both going to freeze at the
That's the
same
only thing
rate.
I've heard. So
That's what he said. They'll both freeze at the same rate.
Yeah.
But he didn't say anything about the feature that you're talking about. So I'll ask him about that when I'm giving this information.
So I think this is cool. This is what everybody's going to go to. I wish they'd learn how to improve on batteries. I just can't. Now they, like I said, prorate from year 10 to 20.
Or if nothing else, improve on how to have a replaceable battery.
Well, when they first came out, what they were going to do is, and this was true of all of them, they've learned that they don't want to do this. So this is all ported plastic, right? So originally what they were going to do is they were going to have two wires to hang out, and that's all you need to do. And they showed you how you can take those two wires and just reconnect them and everything else. Well, in my book, they just learned. They don't want to do that. They want you to replace this for $365. And, because, it's just, I just can't believe this is probably in the marketplace for radio readings 20 years. And to have not made that much progress with the battery is just, I find it. And this will pull more data than we ever thought it would. It's unbelievable how much, like I said, when we can tell you what time you started to have a leak and the extent of your leak and what time it was fixed and repaired and when you flushed your toilet or if you have a continuous leak and all these type things. To me, that's great data to be able to share. The example is too, this can store like three months worth of data. But once you put it up in the cloud, which by the way is the other cool thing about it, and you pay for all that service, you don't have any more upfront. So when they upgrade the programming, everybody gets the benefit of it. So as they can pull more data and interest out of there, I just think it's good for, just like you get your Georgia Power.
Quick question. All right, so we're talking about cloud service, and you're saying you pay for that cloud service when you purchase the meter?
That's right.
Okay, so when you purchase the meter and you put it in 196 Railroad Avenue, say I live there 10 years, all of that 10 years is in the cloud for me to go back and look at, right?
I don't know to the extent, but yes.
But once I move, does the new owner?
It goes under a new customer.
Right, so then,
we can do a comparison.
But that cloud space, if it's attached to the meter, I'm curious as to how that works if the cloud space is attached to the meter.
Well, it is, and that every 24 hours this sends up its usage. So it's a matter of how much you want to maintain.
Right, so if I move
and
out,
how much we want to share too.
If I move out and somebody moves in, the cloud space that's attached to that.
I can't answer that for sure. It's a good question.
I'm
going to say that it probably should last forever. Data, which find that digital data doesn't take up that much space.
Right.
So that's a very interesting question. But all I can tell you is this is what the marketplace. What I like about this is Verizon. I like that. And we've seen other digital signals. And this isn't like, originally, I would have thought, well, that must mean that everybody's got a phone line. This is the deal they cut with. Now, I wish I knew 10 years from now, what's my charge? Because I'm buying 10 years of service every time I stick this in the ground.
Well, not only that, but 10 years from now, is 4G even going to be applicable?
Yeah.
And will that work 10 years from now when they do away with 4G?
Well,
And now 5G is the lowest that they
and
offer.
there's the problem that with, we're in our fourth generation of meters now. And every time they've changed it, we've had to upgrade everything we do here.
Mm-hmm.
Either we're having to upgrade the readers we actually use themselves, upgrade the software that we've had to use, which is the biggest annoyance. They actually want us right now to upgrade all our software in the cloud, so we no longer have to physically, we used to slide in a disk or digitally download it and feed it into our system. Now everything's going cloud-based. One would think that would be cheaper. Guess what? It's more expensive than now to go with them because they've got you. So the same, that's the same thing. We've asked that question about Verizon, and their argument is, well, Verizon wants to maintain that level of service, and it's like they have a monopoly, no different from we do. We put a meter in the ground, you're our customer forever. We put their meter in the ground, they don't want us to go someplace else, so they have to make it affordable to some extent. Now, supporting or not, that'll be the interesting question.
Right.
But I've already told you, from what we found with our existing meters, that everything, we've got all 4 generations of meters in the ground right now. We have, they're just radio read only. Now we've got them where they're digitalized and we can pull some of that data off of them. And like I said, this is what the future is going to bring. Like I said, you can tie this on to where you can cut on the meter. It comes with quite an expense for $110. Because how frequently do we cut on and off a meter in the course of 10 years? We may never cut on and off the meter. For a customer that's constant, why would we? So it's hard to justify that expense. All I can tell you is this is what the market's going to do. And like I said, I think once the customers understand that this is available and you're not buying a meter that said that I had a leak, they're going to look to us. I think that's why everybody's going to have to go to this. That's going to be the problem. And I love the idea, just like a Georgia Power bill. You can see what it's using. If you've got the app right now, you can tell what you're using and what you're doing already. So it's kind of neat in that regard. Do share that with your friend and find out what they're using.
Mm-hmm.
So, what we can do. So this company, like any other companies, seems to all be based out of California. Isn't that right? Anyway, all right. Let's see. But I'm going to have to purchase meters, whether I like it or not. And we buy at a discount rate of 100 meters. And I've got to order boxes and meters. I was really surprised if you ordered in quantities over 1,000. That's one of the questions I asked when I was inquiring price on that. I said, how long would it take to build that inventory? And they said, we can have that inventory in 30 days. So, and that's more than we're getting. Banks County right now, I don't know whose meter they're using. They're not using Neptune or Delta. But they can't get meters. And I don't know who their supplier is. Might be Badger, I could be wrong. But we just had a customer on Garrison Road that came in. They told them, this was 51. They had built the house, they finished it, and they told them it'd still be early May, possibly June, before they put a meter in the ground. Is that crazy? And the house is finished.
All right, question.
Yep.
Do you know what meters Gainesville, city of Gainesville uses?
Badger.
The same thing we use?
No, they use a different Badger.
Badger?
Yep.
Does anyone locally, do you know, use our meters? I'm thinking outside the box.
Neptune and Delta, you mean? Use
Whatever we
To
use.
sell our meters to them?
Yeah, if we decide to switch
I'd
over,
never
if we
buy-
have
I would
that.
never buy a used meter because I couldn't tell you how many hours it'd been in service.
No, I'm talking about the ones that we would have, that we have not used.
Leftover inventory.
Our leftover inventory.
I don't think that would be as big of an issue. We would work towards that. Like right now, I've got to buy some because we're going to run out. I remember the inventory levels aren't good out there. So we're lucky that when I say we're lucky, well, compared to the Banks County District, but yeah, there's people in the state who would sell brand new ones too.
That's what I was.
Every one comes with a register, just like a serial number, and that's the important number. You can't find it anywhere on here, but if you don't have that number, you can't use it. You can never register it into your software. So every one of those is unique in that regard. Yeah, that wouldn't be the issue. Yeah, I bet we'd have people jump at them. You know, as long as we didn't want to gouge them on price. But all I can tell you is, I know we're ready to do this, and the reason I say that, you know, devil's advocate. Joe, you think I was just doing that to you? We're charging a customer right now a replacement cost. I heard a fellow come in today, said, so how long do we pay that replacement cost on our utility bill of $2.65? And Teresa said, forever. And so what happens is, you know, they understand it once we explain it to them, but in 10 years' time, we're going to have to replace that meter instead of just sending you a lump sum bill for installation and everything else, which is around $300. Well, this is $265. This meter, if you said to do this today, that's $3.04 meter replacement fee. And y'all are going to have to weigh all those things out. So what I liked about this was this matches with conversation Chip and I had about changing our billing software out where we can communicate more with the customer and what have you. And this isn't going to do all that but with their utility, you could accommodate that. In other words, it's a matter of a date. So it's not the same thing as getting a bill. You'd still get a bill from us. But you can look online and say, here's my meter, and this is how much I've used. And right over here it says $32.40. That's what I owe this month. See what I'm saying? So I think that's obviously where we need to go. And I'm not, like I said, I'm not saying this is the meter because, but I do like the Verizon side of the equation. I like that a lot. You're buying it one time, and you're buying all the software, you're buying all the upgrades all at one time. But one could argue you're paying $300, $65 paid versus $245. So but again, we said we'd have this conversation, so that's what we're doing right now. We're just kind of weighing one out. What other questions? Joe?
Walk me through this. I'm not making sense. 1,500 meters all the way through $50,000. This next page is installation. Is that all 1,500?
Yeah, we don't want anything to do with that. He just offers.
He wants to install.
Now what happened?
He'll call on each one of them.
Right.
Each one.
So what has been, GFA came up with that. Remember when they had a deal where they'll give you a low interest loan if you'll do 100% change out? Well, most cities didn't have the available staff, so GFA would actually loan you the money to pay somebody to install as well. That's not something I think we should be interested in.
I do read this quote here. Now over here on this thing, it's showing that installing 1 meter by itself,
Right.
total comes out to $11,000. That's all, I guess that's all the peripheral stuff at the bottom.
Right.
And to
Well, those are all, some of it is,
this the cost.
see that ring right there? This ring matches a certain type of meter. So that's, if you buy the 365 version or the 325, it comes with it. It's included. But these are all, they're different, like ours is a Neptune meter. So they're going to sell you that ring that's going to become part of that matches that.
I'm trying to understand your quote here,
Right.
but it's you buy 1 meter, but then
Yeah, I told them to do it on purpose because I wanted to know what is the price of one, what is the price of 1,500, what is the price of. Plus, for us, back to Chip's question, how many do we need just register only, and how many do we need full meters on? And I said we're just not that far down the road, but we want those prices. But to answer your
Well, and
question,
then here's the other question.
Yeah.
With the meters that we've not yet installed, that we have in inventory, would it be cheaper to install that meter and put that base on it as opposed to buying there? Since we've already paid for it, or would we make out better, like she said, and sell the new meters to?
so we'll install about 5 to 6 meters on average. No, let's look at it this way. We'll install about 15 meters a month if we change out like we're supposed to. So, don't worry about the inventory we have right now, because we're gonna use that up. I mean, it's gonna go, like I said, I only got 32 boxes that works. But, cause boxes are just like everything else, here's. But I wouldn't worry about that so much, as, like I said, we could sell off that inventory if we wanted to, the existing. But to answer your question, they're discounting this greatly if there's only a difference between 325 and 365 for that bottom base. But the only thing I would say is let's keep our eyes open to the idea that we're probably going to end up going to something like this. Let's hear what your friend up in the Carolinas. There is no better business than talking to somebody who's been there and done that.
Yeah.
And I don't want to talk to the guy that just put them in 6 months ago. I want to talk to the guy that put them in, 3 years ago. And how many problems do you have?
How many meters are normally replacing as a warehouse time?
So interesting you bring that up. So you got to look at it. We started with radio read meters in Mountain View. And at 10 years, we were replacing 5%. At 11 years, this is Mountain View we're talking about. At 11 years, we were replacing almost close to 10%. Now that's kind of way out now. We've swapped out a lot of them. We've still got some meters out there 15. We don't replace them, just replace them.
Right.
It will tell us when it's bad. And, we can't get a read off of it or something like that. And even then, we can go out and physically read the meter. It may not send us the radio, but that's usually, that's how it goes on the replacement list. So it depends on when you put them in. The example, next thing is, so we put Mountain View first, then we did Morgan Mountain, then we did Riverlands. And then now we've done the conversion, and we've still got old meters out there that still are manual. We've probably got about 200 meters that are still out there manual. Those are the ones, and we call those water-only customers. Imagine if you lose 20% on a meter, how quickly you can recover that by putting in a new meter back on. Does that make sense? And if you are a water-only customer, that's one thing. But if you're a water and sewer customer, now I'm losing 2 revenue streams. Guess which one you want to replace first? The water and sewer. So that's where we're at right now. But back to your question, as bad as I hate our software, we know that we put in a new meter, so it's a matter of being able to pull that data down off the meter and tell us, because we track every bit of that. It's just our software stinks and just won't let you pull the data stream down. But give me a day or two and I bet you I can get you pretty good ballpark numbers. That's why when I was talking to this guy, I said, I don't know what that number is yet. We're trying to feel all that out. Okay. And that's why let's don't settle on this meter. Let's settle on the idea of what this meter can do, which to me does 2 things. Tells the customer when he's got a problem, tells us when we have a problem. When we came in the next one, we'd have an email on any problem accounts out there. And so we do, and then the customer should have received an email as well. And if the customer doesn't respond, we can pick up the phone and call them and say, Mr. Smith, did you know that you got an email saying that you had a meter issue? So I think that's cool stuff, Mr. Smith. So, but let's, like I said, let's look at it and see where we can go. I have not, on this particular meter, talked to anybody in Alabama or Florida that's been using it. I'm dying to hear about those plastic meters. I think that's the coolest thing. I just don't know. They were kidding with me about the installs on these things. Well, how many of y'all are buried up? Well, none of our meters are what we call buried up, but you can't see them if you dug them out or not. As a rule, we're physically checking those meters not every time we run a route, but we're having to go out and look at it ourselves. So that's not nearly as much. Next item on here was the TCR proposed increase we talked about earlier on finance. And we've got scheduled public hearings on February 13th at 6 p.m. and February 20th at 7 p.m. Y'all have any thoughts on that? We'll see what that is.
That's what public thinks about it.
Yep. Well, no, exactly what that number, you know, I wouldn't be.
Well, one thing it does do, it sort of does things by slowing growth down. Because locals don't look twice about coming up here. And then it's gonna be, if they do, it's gonna be economic development that we live with. It's gonna upgrade their economy.
Well, we'll see.
I'm not real sure it's gonna slow it down that much.
Oh, really?
Because we're still under what everybody
Yeah,
else
that's
is.
where I think in comparison to what other communities are charging, like Gainesville, comparatively, they're at $2,100, I think, for a water. Now, again, it's not just the meter, it's the capacity and the reserve and the transmission. But, and we're not there yet. So maybe, for some it'll affect it. But I mean, you know, any increase is not going to be well thought of. But for us,
It's necessary.
But like you
Cost of
said,
doing
it doesn't put anything on the current residents.
Right.
It's new customers.
right. Cost of doing business. All right, the last item is SCADA system replacement. So understand what SCADA is. SCADA is a data stream we get from every well, every pump station. You know, it can tell us the run times on the pumps. It can tell us the elevations on how much water we have in the tanks. And like for a pump station, probably 6 data streams come off of that. Because things will go wrong with it, it can tell us what goes wrong. We have a phase today, we had one of our pumps had a phase failure. And that didn't mean anything to you, but it's on a 3-phase system anyway. So right away we knew what to go look at. So, you know, fortunately that was easy. Remedy. Generator on, generator off. Those are the type of things you can get that day. So it's changed over, it's transferred to generator on, it's obvious we have power failure. Those are all cool and necessary data streams that we should be able to get. So that's what SCADA gives us on wells. It's very limited what we can do with wells right now on the data stream. But we can see the high, the low level, production, how much that pump is generating by gallons per minute. One of the things I wish we'd be able to get on there is be able to review the chemical fields for the chlorine that we use along that way to make sure we don't have an issue, you know, that happens. We check every well pump every day, by the way, with the exception of weekends, and even then we're out and we review all those. But it'd be cool to be able to see that data stream. We don't have that capability right now. At our plant, we have 1,400 digital data streams that come from the operation of that plant. So those are 1,400 things that are either just a signal or they're a measurement, you know, of a signal. And that's great stuff. Everything we have is 12 years old, 13, and I'm not going to give it the right name, but I actually know what the programming is on it. Hasn't been upgraded in 4 years. The programming hasn't, because it's no longer supported. So we have an individual that installed it. His name is Jim Besson. He's a good guy. He's a one-man show. It worries me greatly that our SCADA hasn't been upgraded in support in 4 years, and 2, how dependent we are on it with a single individual. This is a big, big deal. And big deal because if you said tomorrow to change it out, same thing, the availability of product isn't out there. So it would take us, I actually have been trying to communicate with this one company that actually is located out here in Georgia. And unfortunately, the guy that's supplying the information lives in Florida. But anyway, if we told him tomorrow to go ahead and do it, you're probably looking at a $200,000 change out. And it would take you 6 months to get the parts in, another 6 months to change it out. But your operations are dependent upon it. And we need something that's going to take us, like I said, what we're doing now is not programmable, supported. Then, whatever we buy needs to be good for, more than 10 years. Let's put it that way. So it is the type of thing you can capitalize and change, but it is a big deal. For me, it's a big deal because, like I said, what we've got now hasn't had any upgrades for 4 years, and we're dependent on a one-man show to work on it. The company that I've talked to, they're very familiar with what we have, and the good news, like at the plant, so we work on what y'all have heard me talk about, PLCs. So if you change to their SCADA system tomorrow, our PLCs that we currently have would communicate with theirs. So it's more or less, you've heard of plug and play, very similar. So it wouldn't be a giant transition where you got to line up all these digital feeds because they already would communicate. Independent of all your lift stations, all those you'd have to put in new boards for every one of those. When I say new boards, those are boards that will pull the data from the wet well or the pump station and then communicate that back to us. That's a big deal. And I tell you that because we got to figure out how we're going to afford that and when we can do it. And there's not that, I'll tell you this much. Jim Messman does us a very good job, and there's other companies out there that still support the SCADA we've got, but it's dated. It's become a dinosaur, right? When they don't support it anymore, you're in trouble, right?
It's Target.
Yep. So we just got to figure out what we can afford and then how we're going to afford it and how you're going to implement that into the system. Because it's definitely, its time has come. That's nice. So the questions might you have?
A new sewer system, a new sewer plant.
This new sewer system will pay for itself. SCADA, that's one that we're all going to have to, every customer would have an impact on. That's why it's important to get all the years of service we can have it. So do I see failures with it? I'm not sure that the county line water tank is a SCADA issue. Because I've replaced the transducer and what have you, and I just don't think I'm getting good data streams. But that's not my forte. I'll leave that up to Jim Dustin. We'll see. You got anything else? Want to talk about that? There's a bunch of them laying over there.
I can fill mine out.
Good. If you hadn't filled one out, fill it out. If you hadn't given one to your neighbor.
Comprehensive survey.
So I sit there.
I did it online.
Yes, isn't that cool?
Yes.
You take a picture of it and just open it up? Or you?
Oh, no, I just put
Hey,
it.
look.
I typed it in when it got.
Yeah, but you can just turn around and you take your
I
phone.
didn't have it in front of me though. I typed it.
All you gotta do is, I think this is cool. This is what we need to do with
Yeah.
people because it makes
Right.
it so easy. Is you just take your phone, take that QR code that says yellow, and you click it, and it takes you right to the website. And that's the coolest thing, isn't it? So do that more often. Anyway, and there's a bunch of them up there. For more, hoping we'd have a big crowd. A big crowd.
I sent them things out as texts, everybody does.
Good. Anything else? Well, we will go into the work session. So Joey, that's on you from this point forward.
Okay. Got
You mean we don't get cookies or nothing like that?
Yeah, you wanna take a 5-minute break?
Yes.
You wanna think about
Some water.
it? No.
Gotta go.
So Joey, our only business is executive session?
Yes.
Are we gonna take any action when we come out of executive
No, we
session?
can't. We can't.
So Jim, that's a hint for you, if you wanna go ahead and start picking up your junk, so they can go in executive session.
Jump.
Well, it's expensive stuff. Is that mute button red and it's on? That would make me feel a lot better.
No, that means it's on. Yeah.
On them, packages you got there, Dennis, can we take a couple and give them?
Sure, that's why I brought them back here. Go ahead.